Call tonight's council meeting to order. Quorum present. Tonight will be led in the invocation by Pastor Dan Freed from Hilltop United Methodist Church here in Sioux Falls. After the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this time, please rise.
Let us pray. We thank you, O God, for the gift of this community that we call home. We ask you to, with your grace and with your help, just enable everybody here to see just how human we really are, the great potential that each one of us holds, as well as the ability for each of us to hurt and feel pain and to bleed when we are injured. We ask you, O God, help us hold each other accountable and help us hold each other close. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a proclamation tonight. So from students from Augustana is Beth Rasmussen, Chris Zeroff, and is it Maren Gilbertson? Are you all here? Come up. Would you please come up? Thank you. Glad to have you here tonight. The proclamation reads, whereas the Augustana College Student Senate Association has dedicated the spring semester of 2007 to a variety of projects aimed at world peace. Whereas Augustana College and the Bull Forum on Public Affairs hosted former Vice President Al Gore on January 23, 2007. Whereas the Nobel Peace Prize Forum will be held on March 9th and 10th, 2007. In conjunction, Augustana will coordinate Peace Day 2007 with Hawthorne Elementary School. Whereas Augustana College will be hosting Dr. Maya Angelou on Friday, May 11, 2007, and local students in grades 6 and 11 will compete in a Poetry on Peace competition, whereas citizens of the community will be given an opportunity to submit photographs for the My Eye for Peace photo exhibit sponsored by Augustana College, whereas achieving peace in our world can only be accomplished by committing our minds, bodies, and souls to understanding peace and how peace is achieved. Now, therefore, I, Dave Munson, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim Spring 2007 as Semester of Peace, February 2007 to May 2007 in Sioux Falls, and recognize Augustana College for the dedication to excellence in the study of proliferation peace. Thank you very much. Okay, is there any discussion, motions, or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move Knutson.
Knutson, is there a second?
Second, Benninga.
Benninga, seconded. Further comments on the consent agenda? See no further comments. All in favor of approving the consent agenda will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Councilmembers Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Yes.
All members present have voted. The consent agenda has been approved 8-0. Now, is there any Motions on the regular agenda.
Move for approval, Jamison.
Jamison moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. Further comments on the motion to approve?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a resolution I'm walking in tonight dealing with the gift of T. Denny Sanford, and if we could put that right after public input and before item 29.
You'd like to place that before 29. Everybody understand what the motion is? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brown. That'll take 6 votes in the affirmative, so everybody understands that. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
That motion to amend has been approved. Further motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have a motion under new business, special one-day malt beverage license and special one-day wine license for the southeastern chapter of the South Dakota Engineering Society to be held at Dowell Rummel Village, 1000 North Lake Avenue on February 24th for their annual banquet.
I would like to second that motion.
Okay, that motion has been made and seconded. Everybody understand that motion? Everybody? Further discussion? All in favor of that motion will vote yes. We've got 6 votes again. That needs to walk in 6 votes. Everybody understands that. So all in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
All members present have voted. That motion has been approved 8-0. So we're back to the main motion as amended. Further motions? Seeing no further motions, all in favor of approving the regular agenda as amended will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present have voted. The regular agenda has been approved 8-0 as amended. Now is the time that we set aside 5 minutes for public input, and we ask if you want to present public input at this time that you give us your name and then your address, and then we just ask you to stay within the 5-minute time frame. Anybody wish to address the council for 5 minutes? Okay, come forward.
As a network movie said, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. As a disc jockey, I'm not just a disc jockey. There's 50,000 of us around the country. And I do not feel that the city has been very good to small business in the city of Sioux Falls. I think I've been lied to by the city attorney's office. And this morning I found out that a ticket for parking on a side yard, if you go by my house, I invite you to go by 31 South First Avenue at any time. You'll see that my driveway is like any other, probably 10,000 other driveways. There's supposed to be a mandatory side yard, according to the city attorney's office. I tried to appeal the ticket, and this is the point. I asked for a non-partial, non-employee. I got 3 city employees. Now, the city attorney said that the mayor asked for this. As it says in the ordinance, the mayor can do that. Now, Dave, you and other department heads, we've had this discussion, and you said, no, you didn't. City attorney this morning in front of a judge said that, yeah, the mayor asked for that. Well, I said I can appeal this to circuit court. This morning I was told I can't appeal it to circuit court. So I am mad, and I feel that there's been harassment. The names were not given to me. They said that they do not keep records of the complaints when they do get complaints. They do. I don't know how many of you have been told that. It is a lie. They do. The names that all the complaints were a city employee or a employee that's on a city pension right now. So I wanted to get this to circuit court where I can subpoena the policeman that came out and said, there's nothing wrong with your vehicle. That looks like a driveway, not a side yard. I don't have that chance now. I can't appeal a charge. I have a Constitution of the United States at home that says you have a right to meet who is charging you. That's the Constitution. I was lied that they said, we don't know who that is. The names are there. The Human Relations Commission, when I appealed to them, they saw the names. Now, why would the city attorney lie to me that they do not keep these names? Now, the Constitution also says that you have a right to a speedy trial. If you are charged by the city, you have a right to a trial of your peers. I was waiting to get to circuit court. The city attorney's office this morning says you have no right to appeal this ticket. And I do not think that's American, and I do not think that that is appropriate for the city of Sioux Falls. I'm sorry, I grew up here. My grandfather built the house. We've been in business at our location for 82 years and haven't had any problems until the last 2 years. Now, I have a city attorney that says I'm parking on the side yard. I have a city attorney that says the mayor asked for department head city employees for my administrative hearing, and Mayor Dave Munson says, no, he didn't. Now, who's telling the truth? And I think Dave Munson probably is telling the truth, but you can't both be telling the truth. Now, on the positive side of this, there's a way on the internet that we blog and do things to present a spotlight on the eye. It's called thesqueakywheel.com. You can file a complaint, and anytime that anybody will come up to Sioux Falls Small Business, this complaint will pop up on their Google or MSN or Yahoo, and they can read how I think the city of Sioux Falls treats disc jockeys in Sioux Falls. Now, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to have a meeting with our National Association of Disc Jockeys, and we're going to go over this. I do not think it's fair that if the city tells you that if you're a Tupperware lady, that you cannot keep anything in your garage. You can't put anything in your trunk. You can't put anything in your trailer. Now, if that is true, we're going to put these up on the website and show these ordinances and say that I don't think this is very reasonable. I think there's a difference between haves and have-nots. There's a ruling that you passed last year that if you have a sidewalk that somebody's sprinkling water on, you can make a complaint, and anonymously, and the city has to go out and do that. Now, the Sioux Valley has many sprinklers that get their sidewalk wet, and I have seen the city do nothing about it. So all I'm saying is that I think there's some unfairness, and I think it needs to have a spotlight put on it, and we're going to do that with blogs and websites where people can say, well, you know, the city grew around my horse barn, but it wasn't fair when I took my horses to a show that they come back and say, well, I'm sorry, you can't bring those horses back now because the horses aren't on this property. So I'm going to start a committee of small businessmen like myself. My neighbor used to have a truck that he used to park in our backyard because he was a carpenter. Well, that's illegal now. And I think for the small businessman that works in cabinetry or whichever, we're going to get together and see which laws affect us and make a review of these. There's a couple business supply companies that have had an interest in doing this. And we'll put the law up there. If there is a law that says that you cannot store anything in your garage of a business, we're going to put that law up there and say, well, how come the Tupperware lady can, but the disc jockey can't? And we're going to say, we're not just a disc jockey. We can say that if we have a couple speakers in the back of our van, we don't want to take it somewhere else. We'd like to keep our eye on it. So, thank you.
Thank you, John.
I have a question for John. Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, John, I know over the past 2 years or so you've contacted me by what you consider people using the system to harass you.
Yes.
Can you tell the citizens how many times this has occurred to you?
Well, Mayor Munson, when I asked you on our radio program what was the hardest thing that you did during your previous term, and this was before you decided to run for re-election, you said there was a lady at a funeral. Her daughter died on a motorcycle accident, and the hardest thing was she asked you for a favor. Well, that is very much connected to my case, and I would meet the requirement, something else. I'd meet the requirement, something else. I'd meet the requirement, something else. And pretty soon now it's this truck. I got rid of the trailer. I lost $2,000 on it. So now this other truck. Now, funny, this other truck wasn't any problem before, but now it's a problem. It was something else, something else, something else. The zoning office is a nice guy. He even asked me to back my truck out so he could take a picture with it in the driveway, once. He could see what was going on. He kept saying it's coming from upstairs. It's coming from upstairs. And like I say, when I found out the names on the complaints were city employees, city attorneys, it got to the point where I went to the zoning office, and 2 minutes later, when I left, I was pulled over by a policeman. We got a phone call that your brake light doesn't work. Now, who does that? I went to the police department, and they said, this is unusual. we're going to investigate this, because they do keep track of the phone numbers. I never did find out because I think it came from City Hall. Now, the interesting part of that is I couldn't afford to get the brake lights fixed, so I left it out at Wheelco for a while, called the police department, said I'm not driving it. When I got it fixed, it was $300 because the wires had been ripped out. I went down to the police department, got it checked off. I was going to jury duty last fall, and I checked with the clerk of courts about things to make sure everything was okay because I was going to be on jury duty. There's an arrest warrant out for you. I said, what? For a brake light. I got this checked off. I said, who puts out the arrest warrant? City attorney. I raised hell with the sheriff's department. They said, well, we got two things. You can either take it to a judge. Oh, by the way, did you keep that little stub that we gave you? This was 6 months afterwards. Who keeps that little stub? Well, we can put you in jail. So I went over to the police department, and I said, look, I'm going back to jury duty, and I'm going to have to say that I got a real problem with the system in Sioux Falls with the city attorney's office. They looked it up. They checked it off. So why is there an arrest warrant out for me? Well, they made a wise decision because I was ready to really take this to court at that time and went over and pulled it. Now, if it's as easy for the police department to pull it, how come it couldn't have been done before? What I'm saying is, yes, there's harassment. And this, you passed this no complaint anonymously law so that people wouldn't feud with each other. I've got somebody right now that is using the city and city employees to try to put me out of business. And right now I can say I don't have anything to lose, so a dangerous man is somebody who doesn't have anything to lose. And we're going to put a spotlight on it. Education, communication, and that's what I'm trying to do with you right now, is let you know how I feel. And next time, soon when we get this, it's going to go through the American Civil Liberties Union, and I'm eligible for the Legal Defense Fund. It's one thing nice when you don't have anything. But when somebody Googles Sioux Falls business, we're going to put up there just how they treat Sioux Falls businessmen that have grown up here and helped the community. I've done a lot of fundraising for everybody. I don't have any money. I don't have any pension. And I can't park my truck on the street. I was told by a city policeman that if you change your vehicle in any way from its manufactured state, you can't park it on any residential street as a commercial vehicle. I was told that by a police captain. I saw his wife take a picture of my truck and send it to Atlanta, Coca-Cola. Didn't take it to the guy out here that paid for the paint and sponsored it. They sent it to Atlanta. This is getting rather extreme. These are city employees. And I feel that I've been lied to by city attorneys. And I say that matter-of-factly because how many times have people said, who's making this complaint? And you say, we don't keep track of that. You do. You know you do. And if the media wants to follow up on that, they can find out that you really do keep track of it. And I don't think it's working the way it is.
Thank you, John. Others that wish to address the council for a period of 5 minutes on any topic? Seeing no one coming forward, let's move into the agenda. We have the resolution.
A resolution thanking T. Dennis Sanford for his contribution which will positively impact the city of Sioux Falls.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and move passage of this
Please do so.
resolution.
I'll second it. Brown.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just read the resolution, it's rather short. The title, once again, is a resolution thanking T. Denny Sanford for his contribution which will positively impact the city of Sioux Falls. Whereas on February 3rd, 2007, T. Denny Sanford donated $400 million to Sioux Valley Hospital and Health Systems, and whereas a result of such donation, it is estimated that it will bring more than $1 billion in economic development to the city of Sioux Falls. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, that it acknowledges and thanks T. Denny Sanford for his generosity and his contribution to the city of Sioux Falls and future generations.
Thank you. Comments? Others who wish to address council on this package resolution? We have a motion been made and seconded. Further comments? If not, all in favor of the resolution, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present voted. The resolution has been approved 8-0. Item 29.
New 2007 retail wine license for Paramount Studio Inc., Paramount Studio, to be operated at 307 South Phillips Avenue, pending final inspections for fire and building purposes.
Lori Bossman with the City Finance Office representing items 29 through 34. Denise read item 29. Item 30 ties in with that. That's a new 2006-07 retail malt beverage license, also for Paramount Studio, 307 South Phillips Avenue. Item 31 is transfer of a 2007 packaged liquor license. This will go to Redank LLC for the food and fuel at 4701 West 12th Street. Item 32 is transfer of a 2006-07 packaged malt beverage license for the new Asian food market. This will be going to Tam Lee, and the address of that is 315 South Grange Avenue. Item 33 is a special one-day malt beverage license for the Siouxland Heritage Museums to be operated at the Old Courthouse Museum on March 17 for the St. Patrick's Day Family Dance. And item 34 is a request for a 2007 Sunday sales license. This is for the El Rayed Mosque, 510 South Phillips Avenue. I'd be happy to answer questions on 29 through 34.
Questions of Lori on items 29 through 34, Bob?
What type of a business is Paramount Studios?
It is going to be an upscale wine and piano bar.
Okay.
And if the
I remember
applicant
it.
is here, I don't believe. No, that's too bad they're not here. It doesn't look like they're here tonight, but they could have told you a little bit more about it.
Okay, that's all. I
Okay.
remember reading about that. I wasn't sure if that
Yeah.
was it or a
It's a
photo
little
studio.
bit, well, it's a little bit confusing with the name Paramount Studio, but it actually is going to be a wine and piano bar.
Okay,
Thanks for
thank you.
asking, though.
Further questions of Lori on items 29 through 34? Others who wish to address the council on item 29 through 34? None. Is it the council wishes to take them all, or?
Move for approval, item 29 through 34.
I second that motion.
Jameson moved, Knutson seconded the motion to approve items 29 through 34. Further comments? All in favor of that motion to approve those items will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Councilmembers Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Items 29 through 34 have been approved 8-0. Let's go to 35.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 3117 South Ferry Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. This item is approximately 1/3 acre in size. The current owners are proposing to make improvements to the property, which includes commercial development and parking. And this is to bring the zoning into conformance with the land use that's on the property. This is what we call a non-conforming use that goes back to the mid-1980s. So really what we're doing is bringing the zoning into conformance with the current land use. The Board of Adjustment has also approved a variance for setback on making further improvements to the parking lot on this property. And as I said, the current owners are intending to make some needed improvements to this property, and the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning.
Questions of Mike on item number 35? Others who wish to address the council on item number 35? Council discussion or action?
Move for approval, Benega.
Benega moves. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments on the motion to approve? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of the motion to approve, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Councilmembers Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 35 has been approved 8-0. Item 36.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 330 Northwest Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is located on 6th Street and West Avenue. It's a commercial laundromat as well as a construction company adjacent to the south. This current zoning, which is C1, is really somewhat of an outdated zoning ordinance that was on this property many years ago. And again, the purpose of the rezoning is to bring it into conformance with the current land use.
Questions of Mike on item 36? Others who wish to address the council on item number 36? Council discussion or action?
I move for approval. Knutson.
Knutson moves, is second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments on the motion to approve? Seeing no motions, all in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Councilmembers Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present voted 8 yes. Item 36 has been approved. Item 37.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the northwest corner of Benson Road in I-29. The planning commission recommends approval.
This is a rezoning item, and then later on tonight on the agenda, item 51 is the same property that we'll be considering the subdivision plan. This property is approximately 160 acres in size, and it's bounded on the south by Benson Road, on the east by Interstate 29. On the west is Career Avenue, and the north would be the future extension of 54th Street. The developer has proposed a zoning plan that will include approximately 67 acres of future commercial development, approximately 30 acres of office development, approximately 15 acres of multifamily residential, approximately 6.5 acres of medium-density residential for either twin homes or townhomes, and approximately 28 acres of lower-density residential for single-family or twin homes. And we've previously acted on this property with land use amendments. This is in conformance with our long-range growth plan, and we do have these services to serve this particular future development. And the recommendation is to approve the zoning request.
Questions of Mike on item number 37? Bob Jameson.
Mike, to the northwest of this is an industrial park, right?
To the north is the future university center, and
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong spot.
Yep.
yep,
I'm
this,
sorry.
Further questions of Mike on item 37? Others who wish to address the council on item 37? Council discussion or action?
Move to approve, Litz.
Let's move. Is there a second?
Jameson.
Jameson seconded. Further comments? See no further comments. All in favor of approving item 37, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 37 is approved 8-0. Item 38.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the southwest corner of West 10th Street and North Waltz Avenue. The planning commission recommends approval.
this property is just under 1/2 acre in size. It's located within our neighborhood conservation program. The petitioner has been working on this property for some time, removed some existing residential, and is now proposing to develop this vacant corner into a future office complex. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning from office to commercial.
Questions of Mike on item 38? Others who wish to address the council on item 38? Council discussion or action?
Move to approve, Litz.
Let's move. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. Further comments? See no further comments. All in favor of approving item 38 will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 38 has been approved 8-0. Item 39.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at North Phillips Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a rezoning that's being initiated by city staff. The purpose of the rezoning is to amend our redevelopment land on the west side of Phillips Avenue between 5th and 2nd Streets to central business commercial, and then the property on the east side of Phillips Avenue, which is being developed as the Falls Park West area, would be rezoned to the Recreation Conservation zoning district.
Questions of Mike on item number 39? Others who wish to address council on item 39? Council discussion or action?
Move to approve, Brown.
Brown moved. Who seconded?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor?
I guess I do have a quick comment. Mike, with that conservation district, does that mean that that would prevent the railroad track from going into that area?
It would not, but it's making, all of our city parks are typically zoned RC. And so, in other words, Pasley Park has a railroad through it, Cherry Rock Park has a railroad track through it, so.
Yeah, but I mean, if we go ahead, we'll pass this in a few minutes, but I mean, okay, that's conservation district. Wouldn't we have to then, if it's decided the track goes through there, would we have to rezone or?
No, we would not.
Okay, we would just do what?
It's an allowed use.
A railroad track through a conservation district?
Just like any other right-of-way, yes.
Okay.
Further questions? Others wish to address Council 39? We have a motion been made and seconded. I guess we're close to council discussion. Council Member Brown and Council Member Litz moved. Further comments? All in favor of approving 39? Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Benega.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 39 has been approved 8-0. Item 40.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment to Chapter 15.45.070, Planned Development Districts at East 6th Street and North Sycamore Avenue, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised sub-area regulations for revised site development plans and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a parcel that's just over 4 acres in size. It's located to the east of a commercial development that's underway for a convenience store and also a branch bank that's currently open. The property to the east is a church, and the property to the south is a twin home multifamily or twin home development. The amendment that's being presented to you tonight, we've discussed a couple of times, would allow, in addition to office development, it would also allow up to 120 units of senior housing. And we've been working with the developer on this plan for quite some time. If you recall, this was referred back to the Planning Commission, and they have recommended approval of this revised development plan. So it's being presented to you tonight for your approval.
Questions of Mike on 40?
Yeah, Mike, is there a representative from the Lloyd companies here tonight?
Doesn't appear to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask him about that restaurant again. And,
I think I told him to stay home because you were going to ask
I
him.
thought you probably were thinking of doing that. I'd still like to have a restaurant there rather than a convenience store or car wash.
Further questions of Mike on item number 40? Others who wish to address council on item number 40? Council discussion or action?
Move to approve. Let's
move to the second.
Second, Jameson.
Jameson seconded. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of approving item 40 will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Benega.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 40 has been approved 8-0. Item 41.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Section 27-41 of Article 3 of the revised ordinances of the city by revising recreation and facility fees.
Good evening, Don Kearney with the Parks and Recreation Department. By way of background, this fee ordinance was last updated in 2000 when the ordinance was changed to reduce the the swimming pool fees. But it also sets all the fees for all known charges as the date that hopefully you'll ultimately adopt the ordinance. It does generate about $475,000 in general fund revenue annually, and with the exception of a couple items, both from a staff perspective and a park board request, it is primarily a housekeeping process only. The purpose of the update would be to incorporate current charges not addressed in the ordinance. It incorporates Harmadon Park, new programs, revisits this free swimming issue and the progress we've made in that area. It established 4-hour minimum rental times, It also provides seniors and infants, as they're defined, a break. But it's important to note that it is not an attempt to adjust fees based on what everybody else in the Parks and Rec business is charging. With regard to changes to reflect current charges, we do have athletic camps and clinics that we currently charge for that are not in the ordinance. We have tennis matches and duels that aren't covered as it is currently written. And then adult softball, baseball, and tennis practices. With primarily the universities in town, they want to be able to schedule those practices, and so we're seeing more of that, and so we've established a fee for the colleges and universities to be able to accommodate their requests. Changes to the continued, it really assigns a minimum showmobile and bleacher charge. It essentially reflects our practice. We charge a 4-hour minimal rental, and so it establishes that. And also it identifies charges for our community center classes, and it also identifies concession permit fees by adding a sports photo section to that section of the ordinance. Our newly constructed facility is Harmadon Park, and it also includes the anticipated construction of the new softball side of the complex, and so we'll accommodate any new fees that we charge on that side. Some of the other new programs that we have are kickball, our 3-on-3 basketball, and our women's basketball league. The other thing that we wanted to share with you a little bit of was our efforts last year to try to reach out and provide more opportunities for kids that might be falling through the cracks with regard to being able to access our swimming pools. This ordinance does not propose any changes to those fees. But I did want to share that we had 92 additional reduced income family passes above and beyond 2005 numbers. It also we also sold 13 additional reduced income adult passes. We issued 60 passes sold on the installment plan, where kids would be able to would basically track the amount of dollars that they spend at our pools, and then when they reach that $10 threshold for a child's pass, we basically issued them a pass. Some of the families had expressed a challenge in being able to come up with all that money at one time. The other thing that it does, and really probably our most significant effort this past summer, was the 172 additional free passes that we issued to kids and families and adults throughout Sioux Falls. And it calculated the dollar value assigned with the reduced income passes as well as the free passes, and it comes out to be a little bit more than $33,000 in passes issued above and beyond last year. So with regard to the free swimming issue, we weren't able last year to get our flyers in the schools like we normally do for our programs and activities because of the lateness of when this issue was brought up. This year we will be able to do that, so people are aware. All the kids in all the public schools and private schools will get those flyers. The installment plan, I will tell you, as I mentioned at our informational briefing, it was a challenge for staff to try to administer that, but I understand there is some interest on the council to see that happen, and so if that's the desire, certainly we're willing to take another look at that to see how that could be incorporated, but would like your feedback in that area. And then all the other changes that we implemented would obviously remain in effect. The two changes that I do want to share with you are the senior and infant definitions. Staff felt that we would really like to encourage more participation by the senior population, and at 65 we really would like to move that down to 55 as the threshold for being a senior citizen, and we think it captures the baby boomer generation, and I really think that the 65-year-old threshold limits the available participants that are out there that would really like to use our services. And then I think it's just generally more consistent with other venues and hotels, restaurants, generally offer that at the 55 or even less age group. And then the one change that the Park Board did ask is that we reclassify an infant as it's defined from less than 1 year of age to less than 2 years of age. Again, primarily a housekeeping item. And again, not attempt to charge what other cities in the region are charging. The Park Board approved it on December 19th. We're at your briefing on the 29th, and then tonight's obviously first reading, and then next week will be second. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions?
First of all, Don, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a lot of excitement around the table of lowering it to 55. I am one of those counselors that would like to see you. I know it's hard to do the installment plan, but I would really like to see you do that because I think it is a struggle for some families. So if you could find a way to better manage the installment plan where the children just pay each time and keep track of it, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, Don, could you just clarify the $475,000? Is that how much we anticipate making as a result of this ordinance, or is that what we're making right now?
That's essentially what we bring in on an annual basis based on 2007 budget figures.
Then also another quick question. You mentioned we don't want to compare ourselves with other cities. Why is that? Are they lower or are they higher?
I think that the effort was to do it. First step was just to clean up the ordinance so at least it reflects what we're currently charging. With regard to what other cities are charging, I think by and large, I do believe we charge less than what other cities charge.
I'd just like to echo what Vernon had indicated. You know, it may be cumbersome to try to implement that policy, but it seems like it is a good one that we should try. Now, I would note that you single-handedly moved several council people into the senior category.
Further questions?
I'm sorry. Sorry, Kevin. Don, thank you for your incredibly hard work for our city and your patience with me always. Also, I just want to give you a heads up, and this is very new news, but I just want to tell you very respectfully that I will be trying to amend this plan next week to provide free swim passes for all children who qualify for free or reduced lunch. And I know that I have one other counselor who has agreed to second this motion, and I don't know where it will go from there, but I'm just giving you and the other counselors a heads up.
Okay. Kevin?
Just to follow up on Vernon and Pat's comments, I too would like to see that some type of a system. I'm not suggesting that we don't put some responsibility on the users. Maybe we can get a punch card system going, kind of a joint responsibility. I understand that it might be difficult, but if we can come up with a way, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Further questions? Not. Is there a motion to set the hearing date for February 12th for items 41?
So moved, Litz.
Litz moves. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. All in favor of setting the hearing date for February 12th for item 41, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 41, the hearing date has been set for February 12th, 8-0. Item 42.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Building Code and amendments thereto.
Good evening, Ron Bell, Chief Building Official, Planning and Building Services. What you have in front of you is a proposal to adopt the 2006 International Building Code. It's a nationally recognized code published by the International Code Council. It's been out since about April of last year. We've been working on this document to develop local ordinances. We have met with the architects at least twice. Both South Dakota building officials had a all-day seminar with the architects. I also met with the AIA to go over the code changes. You have in your pamphlets about 13 pages of what we considered some of the highlights of the code changes, and with the short time that we have up here, probably the most significant one, technical change, is requiring sprinkler systems in A3 occupancies, which are drinking, or A2s, which are drinking and dining establishments where there's an occupant load of 100 people. One of the thresholds for sprinklers was 300 people before. Another significant change is requiring areas of rescue assistance in multi-story buildings where there's sprinkler, which would be above and beyond the ADA. As far as permit fees, we are proposing building permits to be increased. It's only going to affect those projects that are over $1 million. We're looking at charging 50 cents more per thousand over $1 million. Plus, we're looking at increasing our plan review fees from 15% to 25%.
based on budgetary requirements. Like I said, the building code has been presented to the architects. It's also been presented to the ADA Accessibility Board, and finally went through our Building Board of Appeals with a proposal to present to the council for adoption.
Questions of Ron?
Yes. Ron, I think each time this is brought forward, the question is always raised. What kind of additional cost is involved here? Because usually, not all the time, but almost all the time, more regulations bring higher costs, make housing and building more expensive.
Not necessarily true.
Almost all the time.
There's many changes in here that are clarifications from the last code change cycles, which tries to make the code easier to understand and easier to utilize. It's extremely difficult to quantify what the difference in costs are. But if you take a look at our amendments that we've done in this, you'll see that the vast majority of our amendments are less restrictive and cost less money, especially in the residential code.
Yeah, but we're talking about a huge building code, and we're making some adjustments, which I think is good if it's less regulation and less cost. But hey, we have a lot of other stuff here that we're not even talking about. For example, you did mention the sprinkler systems here for the restaurants at 100. Do you have any rough idea how much that would add to the cost of building a restaurant with 100 people?
I would only be guessing, but I've heard costs of sprinkler systems being around $2 to $3 a square foot. You have to also understand that there are already requirements for sprinkler systems in these types of occupancies. There's 3 different thresholds that will require sprinkler systems.
Okay.
But this is just one threshold that will drop from what it will require is a drinking or dining establishment under the current code at 4,500 square foot will now have to be sprinklered at 1,500 square foot. So that is a significant change.
Yeah.
This is driven by the fire that occurred in New England about 2 years ago.
Well, sure, because they allowed them to use fireworks in there, and that would have not caused that fire.
And if there was a sprinkler system in there, you would have a significant amount of people that would have lost their lives.
And also, I've always wondered, and I've never got a really clear answer. Here we are sitting in this building, no sprinkler system.
Well, I'll save that for the next code.
Okay. Well, okay. And then also, I was taking a look through the proposed ordinance here, and is there anything in there about appeals to circuit court in this one?
Not in this one. You will see that in the residential code and in the mechanical code.
Okay. And so why don't we have that in this ordinance?
Because this article of the ordinance does not deal with licensing requirements. Where we found our requirements for circuit judge or circuit courts going to public hearings, is that the correct term, Gary? In our ordinances, it's referenced in our licensures. Under the building code, under this article, you'll see no licensure in here. You'll see it in the residential code and mechanical code.
But see, it does talk about prosecution of violations, if you violate any of this code.
Yeah.
And it talks about strict liability offense and so forth. So, in other words, you can be fined and so forth and not have any recourse to circuit court, which I'm a little concerned about.
What happened with the strict liability offense, that was more of a cleanup and housekeeping to make sure that all of our codes had the same thing under the liability provisions of the administrative parts. As far as the criteria for circuit court, our licensures, which is residential, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, we've licensed all those. There's a reference for an appeals process in the ordinance that said that you will go to, that any type of appeal will end up going to circuit court, which we found from the attorney's office, and I believe it's from a case from Judge Surtzka, saying that the state law does not allow that. So we struck that out and simply put in that you can still appeal that to circuit, or you could go through the judicial review process. Gary, if you could help me?
Yes, that's correct. anytime in these ordinances that the term appeal is used, that's been changed to judicial review, which Judge Surska's decision tells us is the correct term to use.
So why don't we have it in this ordinance dealing with the International Building Code, judicial review?
Because
granted, it doesn't deal with licensing, but it talks about violating the code. And so why don't we have that in there?
Because that criteria is found under the appeals process for the licensures, for anybody that goes to our board where we would end up censuring or taking away a license. The ordinances for those licenses say that you end up going to circuit court, which is incorrect by state law.
But we're prosecuting people under this code here. It's a prosecution of violation. Right, it doesn't deal with licensure, but still, why don't we have an appeal process if you're prosecuted?
There is an appeals process. We've got any appeal that a building official would make or the assistant director of building services would make on a licensure goes through our appeals board. And what we're saying is that you still have the ability to go through judicial review after that process.
Okay, further questions?
I guess, Gary, why isn't there judicial review in this particular part of the code? We're talking about prosecution of violation and all this kind of stuff. You request legal counsel and all this kind of stuff.
I concur with the explanation that Ron gave, but Kermit, let me give you a more detailed explanation if I could before the second reading.
Oh, okay. That sounds fine.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Ron, and item number 42. Thanks, Ron. Let's go to 43.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Existing Building Code and amendments thereto.
This is a brand new ordinance. The 2003 International Building Code, by reference, utilized the 2003 International Existing Building Code. In the scoping provisions of that code that we adopted last time, it gave the municipality the ability, or better yet, an architect or a designer to use this code, which gives alternates to code requirements in existing buildings, primarily to be able to conserve existing buildings. Quite shortly, what it does is it allows a designer to not meet all the requirements of a brand new building in existing buildings. What happened during the 3-year code change cycle with ICC, that there was a large feeling between the building officials across the country that this code was too lenient. And what happened at the national level was that adoption by reference was taken out. So now, if a municipality chooses to utilize this code for alternates for existing buildings, that you have to adopt it as an ordinance. And that's exactly what we're proposing to do. When this came out in 2003, we utilized this, and we've utilized this code on many downtown buildings and many existing buildings, including even residential construction. What has happened also with this code is that it kind of toughened up on some of the manual fire suppression requirements, the automatic fire detection requirements, and the sprinkler requirements and changes of occupancy. But what we have done is we've inserted ordinances from what our use has been for the last 3 years, and you'll see some of those notable amendments in your packets. This was presented to the Building Board of Appeals, and it was reviewed and approved unanimously by the Board for adoption.
Questions of Ron on 43?
Ron, will this improve the housing inspector's ability to define what changes are okay to do, let's say in the area of stairways, doorways, entrances and things like this?
In existing buildings, yes.
Very good. And you said it was for residential as well.
This code is applied to all occupancies that are out there. To give you an example of previously, before we had this code, if you were to change out a window and you went down a unit dimension, and if it was in a bedroom, we would have required that window to be a conforming egress window to today's standards. What this code says is that window has been there for years and years, it's functioned for years, and all this code will say is that you can't make that egress any smaller than what it was and not have to meet current codes.
Very good.
Further questions, Kermit?
Yeah. It says the second change mandates egress windows in basements. So am I correct in my understanding that if you have a basement that's not inhabitable, you still have to have an egress window? Or
You're one code ahead of me, Mr. Stegers. That's a residential code.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Very sorry.
That'll be next.
Yeah. I have no questions about this code.
Okay, further questions of Ron on 43? Let's go to 44.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Residential Code and amendments thereto, to modify certain references to judicial review in Chapter 11, Residential Code, Chapter 15, Electricity, and Chapter 33, Plumbing, and to increase certain fees for licensed residential contractors.
This proposes to adopt the 2006 International Residential Code. For lack of a better term, this is a home builder's code. This code is promulgated by ICC with a lot of input from the National Association of Home Builders. As far as this review was quite lengthy. We went through the Sioux Empire Home Builders Governmental Relations Committee. We met monthly, and we went through every item that we saw as any type of modification to the way that houses are built here in Sioux Falls. A lot of effort was put into this with this committee, and what resulted is some of the local amendments that you will see with this. As far as probably the most significant change with this is this will require a minimum height for openable windows, and we end up doing a local amendment for that. And what this says, if you have a window that's more than 6 foot above grade, and the national code says if it's within 24 inches of the floor and openable, that you can only open it a certain amount. And the reason being is for statistics of children falling out of screens through windows and so forth. We amended that to the 18-inch height, which is consistent with tempered glazing requirements that the contractors are used to. As far as fee increases, we're looking at increasing the residential contractor's license to be consistent with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Those three licenses are issued biannually, and they're $200 for 2 years, or another $100 a year, whereas the residential contractor's license used to be $200 for 3 years. We're looking at upping that such that everybody's equivalent for new license fees. We're also looking at doing the same with renewals, try to get that to par with the other contractors' licensing requirements. Here you will find, because in the licensing requirement, residential contractors, the provisions for changing the terminology circuit court to judicial review. And because we had that same language in our electrical and mechanical, we also put this in this ordinance. And you'll also see it in mechanical when we get to it. Again, this went through the Governmental Relations Committee with the Home Builders Association and our Board of Appeals, and is being proposed to you for adoption.
Questions on 44?
Yeah. Am I reading that correctly then, that in a basement that's not habitable, that there is going to be a requirement for egress windows?
Yes.
Why?
Okay. What we have had for local, what we have had for windows for basements is that any basement that is going to be finished in the future is required to have an egress window. What used to be in there is any basement with a habitable room required to have windows. Well, 99 out of, well, it's probably even more than that. Very rarely will a contractor build a house without putting some form of an egress window because of the future finishing of that basement, because every bedroom also has to have an egress window. What happened with this is that it was taken, the term habitable room was simply taken out to simply assure that you'll always have an egress window installed for the future finishing of that basement.
But I guess, why are you assuming that people are going to finish the basements off? Why do you assume that?
Why would you assume not?
Because people don't like basements to live in.
Well, the vast majority of the houses that we have, you have finishes in basements. We've had, I can give you one example of, we had an apartment, a multi-unit apartment that was landlocked by the apartment and landlocked by a garage where there was physically no place to put an egress window in. And because we never had the provisions of habitable rooms, we issued the permit. And we've had people come in that want to finish off the basement, and then we're saying because you can't have an egress window, you can't finish off the basement. What this does, it gets rid of that. And it says that if you're going to have a place that's going to be used for habitable purposes, you need an alternate way out for exiting in case of a fire.
Okay, I do have some other questions here. What's wrong with the green gypsum board?
That if green gypsum board, that if it ever, as far as tile,
it's no longer allowed behind tub and shower walls.
It's because it degrades if it gets significant amounts of moisture, and that's where you would have tile, any type of tile on the behind in a tub enclosure. This is only within a tub or a bathroom enclosure that you would have to. The point is that the green gypsum board does degrade when it gets exposed to moisture for many years. And this is a national change that was.
Also, too, why do we charge an inspection fee for swimming pool fence enclosures? Why do we charge an inspection fee for somebody putting in replacement windows?
Because there's codes that our building inspectors go out and verify.
Yeah, but
if you replace the windows, if you locate it close to a door within 24 inches or within 18 inches of the floor, back to the existing building code, the windows only have to meet the size, but there's human impact requirements where you'd have to have tempered glass. That's where our building inspectors would go out and check for. As far as swimming pool enclosures, city ordinance requires fences around swimming pools, fences and gates.
What kind of justification was given for that?
When it was put into ordinance back in 1981, children that are unsupervised getting to the swimming pools and drowning.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we have to have an inspector come out and look at that.
It's a minimal fee. It's a minimal fee, and it verifies the height required by ordinance and that the gate has a closure and a latch on it.
Yeah.
That's all that we're checking for.
And then lastly here on this one, in regard to the appeal process, we are putting in the judicial review because of that case dealing with the construction company and the red light issue. But Sirska also mentioned, too, that there were other ways that we could deal with this, too. This is providing less protection for the citizens on the appeal process by having judicial review instead of going to circuit court. And one suggestion the judge made is that we contact the state legislature and get that changed in state law. And I don't know if anybody in the city has thought about doing that or not.
I'd have to defer to the city attorney's office.
I'm not saying that we would not recommend that to the mayor and council in the future, but there was certainly not sufficient time to deal with it for this legislative session. It would need to go through the municipal league and the judicial system, because we are not at all convinced from previous contact with the judicial system that they're anxious to take administrative appeals of this matter. But certainly it's something that could be talked about for next legislative session or beyond.
I mean, I think that that's something the city should be thinking about in the future, because this is providing less protection for the citizens, and that should be our primary concern, not the workload of the judges.
Thank you. Further questions? Ron on 44. Let's go to 45.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Mechanical Code and the 2006 International Fuel Gas Code to modify certain references to judicial review in Chapter 11, Mechanical, and to modify certain licensure provisions.
This proposes to adopt the International Mechanical Code and the 2006 International Fuel Gas Code. These are the codes that your heating, ventilation, air conditioning, refrigeration, and fireplace contractors utilize for indoor air and comfort systems. This will propose to update to the most recent national standards called the ASHRAE standards, going from the 2001 to the 2004, which mechanical engineers will be utilizing for commercial projects. As far as fee modification, it's more housekeeping than anything else. These codes were presented to the local chapter of the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration Engineers, and also the Sioux Falls Heating and Contractors Association. We also brought these to our Mechanical Board of Appeals and went through these item by item and got a unanimous decision to present to council for approval.
Questions of Ron?
Yeah, Ron, we're dealing with a number of these international codes this evening. Am I correct that only Sioux Falls and Rapid City adopt these codes?
No.
What other cities in South Dakota adopt these codes?
Pierre, Mitchell, Aberdeen, Brookings, Yankton, Spearfish, Lead, Deadwood, that I can think of.
Is that all? Okay.
That's
How
most
many,
of the-
how
most of the
many,
cities.
how many cities across the country adopt these codes?
10,000.
10,000 cities adopt all
10,000
these codes?
cies and counties across the country have used the ICC code.
Stu, do
Okay.
you have any questions on this? Okay, let's go to, any further? Let's go to 40, okay.
Did the mechanical, the guys here at Sioux Falls get their Board of Appeals set up just like the Board of Appeals in Iowa?
What do you mean?
With the members and who would the guy be at the hearing? Would that be you at the hearing with the Mechanical Board of Appeals?
Myself and the 3 mechanical inspectors sat with the 5 individuals that we have in our mechanical board. And we presented to the mechanical board all of the modifications of changes from the 2003 to the 2006. And we also presented to them the existing ordinance, got their input to see if there was any changes that we needed to do, and so forth.
Okay, no, I think you misunderstood my question. On the Board of Appeals that I'm on, when a builder has a code question, they come in and there's 5 members of the board that, will talk about it and make a decision. For the Mechanical Board of Appeals, is it the same model?
The same
model. If I'm a mechanical contractor and I've got a problem with the building code interpretation and I want to go to the Mechanical Board of Appeals.
If you were an individual that had a code requirement, like an interpretation a mechanical inspector is making, that you would then go directly to the mechanical boards. We have separate boards set up in building services, one for electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and building.
Yes, and is that model set up as the same one as the Builders Board
Yes.
of Appeals? Okay, very good.
Further questions? If not, let's go to 46.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Property Maintenance Code and amendments thereto.
This is the last of the codes for building services. This is the International Property Maintenance Code. This code deals with it's utilized by our housing inspector for existing rental properties or other properties within the city. This will provide the due process that a housing inspector has to go through to try to attempt to bring a property up to minimum building standards, and also would give the due process for the worst-case scenario of trying to tear down a structure that is completely non-compliant. These issues were brought to our other board, I forgot to mention, that would be our Property Maintenance Board. They reviewed the criteria and also proposed approval, plus we also met with the South Dakota Multi-Housing Association in a couple of meetings and got their input and ended up putting in a couple of local amendments at their request.
Questions on 46?
Yeah, Ron, I got a question here on the heat supply. It says in the ordinance 602.3 heat supply, every owner and operator of any building who rents, leases, or lets one or more dwelling units, rooming unit, dormitory, and so forth, is to furnish heat to the occupants thereof shall supply heat during the period from October 1st to May 1st to maintain a temperature not less than 68 degrees Fahrenheit in all habitable rooms, bathrooms, and toilet rooms. So we're placing the responsibility on the owner of an apartment complex to do this, right? But don't we have many apartments where when you rent an apartment, you pay for the heat yourself?
This only defines a minimum standard as to how warm a heating supply system is required for habitable space. That's all that it does.
But it places the responsibility on the owner and operator. I mean, if the individual renter pays the bill to the Mid-American, how can we put this responsibility on the owner and operator?
If he pays the bill, we'll never use it. If he pays the bill and if the tenant maintains a temperature of 65 degrees, we're obviously not going to get a complaint from that tenant for a housing inspector to go out and verify that there's not enough heat within an apartment.
What I'm saying is this is not worded correctly because it's placing the responsibility on the owner and operator. So, I mean, I'm just saying this is not written the way the real world is, where most of the tenants pay for it.
But that's not the point. All that this standard does is it defines a minimum temperature that a heating system has to have for a tenant within a building.
Wow, it's just a point of clarification. The capability just has to be there, right? I mean, some sort of heat mechanism has to be available between that time frame. And if they never turn it on, they never have to pay the bill.
Well, it says shall supply heat, too. The owner and operator shall supply the heat. That's not usually the case. I'm just saying this is poorly worded.
Okay, further questions on 46? Let's go to 47.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2006 International Fire Code and amendments thereto.
Good evening, Perry Volden, Sioux Falls Fire Rescue Fire Prevention Division, here tonight to present, I guess, the last of the international codes, if you will, that is also a companion document to those that Ron had just spoken to. During the informational session, I went through the PowerPoint and went over those things that we had in the code that were essentially notable changes or changes to the code or notable amendments. And tonight I'm here to field any questions relative to that document.
Questions on 47? Do you want to take the same? Do you want questions on 48 too? Then 48 is yours, isn't it? Or?
Yes, 48 is mine also.
48 for Perry. 49 for Perry. Go ahead. 48.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Chapter 23 of the revised ordinances of the city by adjusting the fee schedule.
Questions on 48? Let's go to 49.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Chapter 38 of the revised ordinances of the city.
Questions on 49? See no questions, so is there a motion to set the hearing date for February 20th for items 42 through 49?
I so move.
Knutson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Jameson.
Who seconded?
Jameson.
Jameson, okay. Jameson seconded. Further comments? Hearing no further comments, all in favor, set the hearing dates for items 42 through 49 for February 20th. Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present have voted 8-0. The hearing date has been set for items 42 through 49 for February 20th. Item 50.
Deferred action, a resolution approving the special assessment roll for construction of grading, gravel, curb and gutter, sidewalk, storm sewer, asphalt surfacing, driveway approaches, water main and water services, sanitary sewer and sanitary sewer services, and street lights on East Robur Drive from North Cliff Avenue to approximately 1,400 feet east.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. This first reading for this resolution came back in November, and there's been a great amount of work done between now and then, which I hope to quickly summarize for you. I also know that property owners also in the audience tonight to weigh in on this item. But first, it's been brought to my attention that there was a correction needed to be made to the assessment roll, and that correction's been made. We've talked to the property owner, and it will reduce the amount to be assessed on this project from $429,533.68 to $421,277.38. This reduced assessment affects 1301 East Robar Drive, reducing the first assessment from $26,933.28 to $18,676.98. That correction's been made. All right. Again, just to restate the location of Robar Drive, it is north of I-90, and it is just immediately east of Cliff Avenue. And as I said, this item was deferred because we received a letter shortly before we were bringing this for second reading. And the letter came from Mr. Spader, and it was asking to be waived of his assessment based on, number one, if a business could be considered for the personal household limitations based on the revenue that this campground has received over its history. And we responded to him that law is in place to keep, and it's reserved for personal property, not commercial businesses. Third point was brought forth because of the coordination of the development between Mr. Sprader's campground expansion property and the time frame that took to develop the plans, take them through the system, that put a perceived damage on his property. And again, the biggest issue there is how was the drainage going to be handled. Second point was a delay that was brought by a city inspector. And just to summarize what we've done, again, we spent a considerable amount of professional time meeting with Mr. Spader, retracing the steps that took place by both the city and Mr. Spader as development plans to expand and improve his campground property. Last Monday, on January 29th, the Land Use Committee heard from Mr. Spader. He also heard from Chad Heavey with Public Works, as well as myself and Mike Cooper with Planning and Building Services. We prepared a presentation. From our standpoint, went through how the area around this park has been developed over time, and also how Mr. Spader's land plans were brought forth and what those time frames were. I think one of the key things to look at here is that this area here all drains from the south to the north, and just immediately to the north in that Granite, you can go back one, just in that subdivision labeled Granite Valley Addition, there is already a detention pond with a open channel. And what we did was, and it obviously took several steps, that's why this has taken some time, we maximized that drainage system, which from our standpoint minimized the impact on Dwayne's property, but also keeps more commercial property on the tax roll that's adjacent to the interstate. Again, since this was a lot of details, we brought it to the Land Use Committee because we could speak on this for a long time. And so I know Dwayne is here tonight. He would like to speak with you. Councilman Litz mentioned at the informational that the Land Use Committee will be recommending to you to approve this resolution. Dwayne and I talked on Friday and today, and he's aware that my recommendation to you will be to approve this resolution. I make this recommendation because his concerns are not related to the street construction of Robar Drive and the special assessment. And I need to keep these separate. He and I also truly agree to disagree. And on the fact that the city should participate in his costs. I do not agree with that after retracing the steps, hearing his concerns, and hearing the concerns that came from our staff. From my standpoint, it's unfortunate that we were not able to resolve our differences between and the time frame of how this land was developed, but we've kind of done our due diligence from my desk from that standpoint. And so, again, in our conversation that Dwayne and I had earlier today, I told him that if he feels he still has a claim against the city, that he needs to seek the appropriate channels to submit that claim. So with that, I think Dwayne Spader would like to speak to you.
Are there questions of Mark? Others that wish to address the council? When we ask if you could respectfully try to keep within 5 minutes, and you could do that, we'd appreciate it. Because most people in this, I think, understand where we're at, so you can just kind of summarize, we'd appreciate it. Then give your name and address, please.
Dwayne Spader, 5417 North Indiana. Mr. Mayor, that was a joke, wasn't it? I assume that was...
Well, no, most people really you don't understand. Okay, go ahead.
I thought it was from my normal presentation that I usually do in the 5-minute time period. So I really thought it was a joke. I'm going to start out with my pride in being a Sioux Falls citizen, and it has been over the years. We brought thousands of people to Sioux Falls, and just 2 weeks ago we had 122 people here from across the United States and Canada for 5 days. And we do that, and we don't shout anything. And I say that because I'm trying to be positive. And I don't like being here doing what I'm doing right now. I'll say that up front. I hate that I'm here, and I'll try to hold my frustration level down. That I'll try to be positive. And Mr. Mayor, but I'm going to try to stay with my notes so I won't stray, because there's 1,000 different ways we could go. And I sent this letter to each of you. After the first hearing, I found out you did not get it. I'll come back and address that a little bit later. So I sent it to each of you, and I don't expect you to remember, so I'm going to briefly review it. And the first Mark talked about it was I did get the 10,000 thing, so I just inquired about it if there's any consideration. And appropriately, I accepted the fact that it wasn't with it. But I'm going to address that why 2006 was an absolute disastrous year for the campground. And I do think it is a direct reflection of city activities that was taken out of my control. And I'm going to argue that they are related to the Robo Drive project, because I appreciate it. And the disaster was from 3 times the city withdrawing commitments to me. And the last commitment was the most disastrous with it. And I'm going to try to put that in perspective with it. Then when we was able to, that cost the campgrounds over 6 weeks of key construction time in the fall of 2005. And I'm not going to go into all the details. Come back. And then in 2006, Mark talked about the electrical inspector that come in and shut down the campground for 3 weeks. It was almost like, golly, Spader, they almost got the campground fixed. Let's go out there and make sure that they don't have it, because that caused the campground not to open until after July 4th. And even then, it was an unfinished aspect, which was tremendous cost. And I said in that letter, the city was not involved and should not be held responsible for the initial non-attractive financial investment required in the campground changes forced by the surrounding area being developed and the reconstruction of Robo Drive. And if any of you that were here when at the time the Robo Drive project come out, I stood up and said we didn't need it, but I supported it. We could not hold up, and I did not recommend any further delays because of the commitment that was made to me. And that it needed to go ahead because further delays would affect the campground, and it would also affect other businesses. However, the campground should not have been subject to the city actions that together will nearly equal the road assessments. It's more than equal, they far exceed. Now let me try to summarize, and this is from the meeting the other night, try to leave out as many of the details as I can, because we can get into, I got this as backup, and I got 2 boxes in my office as backup if you need them, but I will try to keep it short, Mayor. The summary, I'm going to read this to you because as much I don't like reading, but I will. Summary of effects of Rober Drive project on the campground. The Rober Drive project forced the campground to proceed. We had to proceed with the development of the campground because it flooded. We knew it would. That was no surprise to anybody. We won't go into details on that. The city's actions further caused them to be interconnected by removing both authority and control from us to proceed with the campground project. Any attempt by the city to disconnect them would be totally unfair. To disconnect, and I'm told that this way, they're 2 separate issues, and I'm going to argue they are not 2 separate issues. There was no way that we could proceed with the campground, and the Rober Drive forced the campground either to, let me stay on my notes. The authority and control needed for the campground project to be completed was verbally committed by the city and an integral part of the approval process by the city council. That night when I stood up and said I support it, it was because I had a commitment, and I'll share with you what that commitment was. That commitment was if I sign an easement for 25 foot of the campground, that would fulfill my obligations, and that easement was signed, and it was in property of the city at the time. And I was told if I did that we could go ahead and there'd be no problem with the campground project. And later on, they come back and change their mind again. There were several other comments. After receiving council approval that authority and control needed for the campground project operation to be completed was verbally committed by the city and an integral part of the approval process of the city council. And that's why I think to try to separate them is unfair. After receiving council approval for Rober Drive project, the city then withdrew that commitment, causing the campground project to, number 1, not be able to defend itself against the effects of the Rober Drive project, and number 2, that created undue expenses for the campground ranging from $125,000 to $200,000 additional costs above and beyond. Because of these actions were directly associated with Rober Drive project, the campground lost all potential to appeal to the city council's decision on the Rober Drive project. For that reason, to try to disconnect them as 2 separate issues would be totally unfair. Therefore, we are asking the council to one of 2 choices: to waive the Rober Drive assessments for the following reasons. The Rober Drive project and withdrawal of the city's commitment caused the campground from 2 to nearly 3 times the amount we originally consented to at the council meeting for the Rober Drive project. By the way, and reviewing my notes, and I found out that was estimated at $145 a foot. And I didn't dig through the box and find my other notes I meant to, but it ended up costing us $188 a foot. And I think that's the difference between the 80s to the $111,000 that it went. Now, and I wasn't even going to mention that, but it did go up even there. But that's not the issue. The issue is that the commitment cost the campground from 2 to nearly 3 times, and it was well over 3 times, what we originally consented to at the council meeting for the Rober Drive project. This request, we believe, is more than fair because of undue expenses caused by the city reacting to commitment to us. And that request is that you waive those fees. And if you waive those fees, I have to tell you, I'm not going to jump with joy. I'm not going to walk out of here thinking I'm a winner, because I will not be a winner. I would much rather pay that $111,000 on the assessment than to compensate for the $200,000 additional note, and it did. I got over $200,000 additional that I had to borrow from the bank that I'm going to have to pay back because of these city actions and retractions. So I'm not going to walk away a winner saying, well, I stuck it to the city. I'm still going to pay a premium even if you choose to waive them, which is going to be my request. Secondly, in lieu of that, if the council desires more input, I request this to be deferred until April or May meetings in order for me to be able to present material that better defines why I believe the city is responsible for tremendous additional costs that were incurred. And the reason I need until April or May, because I am not in town. It's April before I get back, and I'm going to need some time. I travel a lot in my business, and I want to thank the council for the delays they've given me. I travel a lot in my business, and I hope I'm going to be promoting Sioux Falls in all those travels. And I want to lighten this up. I just got to tell you, at one of my national conventions, I'm going to try to lighten it up. I'm frustrated, and it's my way of. At one national convention, I'll just share it with you, and we had over 1,000 people there, and they used to always razz me. I was one of the keynote speakers, and they used to always razz me about, you're from where, Sioux Falls, or whatever it is? And you people know the image of Sioux Falls in the East Coast and West Coast. They still believe it's a Indian village up in Siberia. So and this was in the late 80s. I had them all. I asked them, I says, how many people here got a credit card? And a lot of hands went up. I says, okay, where do you send your money to? And there was kind of a gasp in the audience. Oh, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. From that day on, I never heard anything bad about Sioux Falls again, Rasvar. So I will be promoting, but I have to tell you, it gets hard when some of the things that are happening to me are happening again. And I say again because I'm not going to go back, but this is not the first time. The only option, so I believe the cities, I'm requesting that those meetings be delayed so I can give you additional information the costs occurred. The only option to keep those costs from occurring would have been for us to close down the campground due to the Robert Drive project. However, I prefer not to spend additional time and cost to take this avenue. A business should not have to spend additional time, energy, and money to defend a business, to defend a position that has already cost a tremendous amount of time, energy, and money simply as a result of city actions. If this delay is considered, I would suggest the council approve the assessment of others involved other than the campground and leave the campground so they can continue with their business as normal. Now, what I would try to do, because we can go on and on and on, and box after box, but I'll just briefly give you an indication what I would like to come back and do for more reconsideration that I think the council. This is 2 meetings we've had, and I compliment, and I really do compliment Mark and the professionalism that he exhibited. He's new to the job, and I compliment on that. But let me just show you what I'm up, why there's a difference. This is the first sequence of recent events. February 5th, 2005, Mr. Spader asked City to determine drainage needs on his property. Engineering targeted answer by June 2005. February 5th, this is the first 3 items of a detailed list, which is similar to what you got. February 5th through July 7th, no information or plans submitted by Mr. Spader to engineering for review. And that was the first time I said, what is that? No plans were submitted by me, and it looks like that I asked the city to determine the needs. Now, the truth is, it wasn't February 5th. February 5th, I was in San Francisco. And February 5th was a Saturday. It was February 8th that I was back in town. And I'm not going to hold anybody accountable for dates because I was, in my letter to you, I was off on some dates because I didn't dig through my boxes. However, the indication here is it's my obligation to provide the city something. The city called me, the city engineer, and 2 engineers called me and asked me for a meeting. They come out to my office that February 8th, and they told me about the Robert Drive project, and that is where I asked them, would you please give me an answer to these 2 questions? Where's the water going to go, and what's my obligation? I was told I would have an answer in writing, and I put by June 1st, and it might have been May 1st because I was off a month. I was off a month. I wrote these comments a lot of times when I was flying across the country or evenings in a motel room to that, so I did not have my, so I was off a month. But they told me I would have an answer to those 2 questions. because I knew there was a problem. Everyone knew there was a problem that was on it. You heard from the other people that were there. Okay, then the second meeting was the second sequence. They changed it. February 5th, 2005, Mr. Spader inquires about drainage way in his property. No concept plans are submitted for review, but city is open to ideas. Now again, all of a sudden, it went from they promised to tell me the answer to those two questions that, wait a minute, Spader's not doing his job. And in that process now, and I can go item for item like that, and I would like the chance to do it again because I did not do this the other night. I did not feel it was the issue. And we can get into other issues as why we were shut down, the inspector shut down. The inspector walked in using one line in the code. I can read the line to you if you want, out of the code book. And if you've seen the code book, it's page 765, I think. They took one line out of there, shut our campground down, and they shut it down on the auspice that was safety. It had nothing to do with safety. The campground electrical system was designed by an electrical engineer. But that shutdown cost us another 3 weeks that spring, and therefore we could not even open 2/3 of the campground until the 4th of July weekend, and we had to go all summer. And those things combined cost us, I see, $125 easy to document that on the low side. Over $200,000 is not hard to justify either on those because of all the costs, the meetings, the contract. So, and I was told today, and that was going to be the decision of our meeting the other night. I do not feel it is a fair decision. I do not think it is a right decision. And because I had no way to come back. We were offered the alternative of waiting another month to go before the, what do you call it, the adjustments council, when you got a dispute, the Board of Appeals. Board of Appeals or something. Well, that would have just doomed this campground for the whole season, period, because it was laying dormant as was. We couldn't do it. So the 3 weeks and that loss was because the contractor had to reorder the wire. It was not in town. It did not come. When it got here, they changed the design of it. That changed the design of the electrical spots, blah, blah, blah. I can go on and on and on. Yes, Kermit.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Dwayne, it sounds like you have a number of multiple problems here with the city. But I guess the question I have is, how much does the city want to try to assess you for? How much money do they want from you?
$111,000, which I originally thought was in the 80s. It went from 145 to 180, but I didn't complain about the 11. Okay. They saw in detail what they did. I did not object to that, but it did.
So the $111,000 is the total, including the sewer, the water, everything. Is that right?
Everything that the city did, yes.
That's what they want. They want $111,000 out of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Good to the end? Okay. So questions of Dwayne at all? Are there questions? Others that wish to address the council on item number 50? Is there council question?
I guess I'm still trying to understand, why is there a supposed difference between what the city is saying, that this is just an issue of well, the difference in the issues between the two of you? I guess that's what I don't.
Your question again?
Yeah, you mentioned that the differences between you and Dwayne. He seems to want to lump things together, and you seem to want to separate them. Can you explain that a little more, Mark?
I can. The one thing about the roadway assessment is it starts with a petition, and once the prescribed budding landowners reaches a point over 55%, it qualifies to be constructed. And this road was just like that.
So how many people signed the petition?
There is 6 or 7 parcels. I can check my notes, but it's 1,400 frontage feet. It's 1,400 roadway feet, so 2,800 frontage feet of people that signed the petition. Whenever we do a project, especially when we impact businesses, we look for ways that we can reduce impacts. one of the key things here is this is a separation item, is we built a separate road to the north to keep the businesses open while the main road was built. The other thing, too, which was a request from Mr. Spader, is that if we could not start the construction until after Labor Day, and then we would compress the schedule to 30 days to construct this roadway, that would minimize the impacts on businesses, but also the campground industry. That was carried out. And so essentially, the Robar Drive, as the petition was signed and carried out and the construction was carried through, that is why we're here tonight for the assessment roll. It happens to be the same time that the campground was ready to expand, make several improvements, and plans take time to develop. And also, I think everyone in this city knows with recent events in 2004 how personal, how sensitive drainage and drainage design is. And so they truly are separate because, and again, Councilman Staggers, I could go into all the detail. That's why I wanted to use the committee structure on this, because there is a lot of steps that are taken when plans are developed, neighbors are coordinated, and drainage is facilitated. And with all that in mind, that's why the two are separate to me.
Are you referring to the plans of his redevelopment of the campground?
That's
or are
correct.
You referring to Robar Drive?
That's correct. Yes, his the campground expansion plans.
Okay.
And so to me, this is there was necessary things that he had to do to make sure drainage was facilitated. He also wanted to expand his campground to the maximum limits, which any property owner would want to do that. And also, we want to do that without impacting a neighbor inadvertently. And so there's a number of things that were done to facilitate this development. One of the things was moving a historical drainage path. In order to move a historical drainage path, which used to come diagonally across Mr. Spader's property, it was to, in the hope that it would be realigned and shared on the property line. The comment that was stated, if a easement was signed, his easement, there would be a shared easement, one easement on his property, one easement on the neighbor's. This would create an open channel. The city helped to facilitate to try to get the two neighbors to work together, and that didn't work out. The neighbor to the west did not want to sign the easement and had no obligation to sign that easement because it was a historical drainage path. And so at that point, what happened in the last hours, and I'm paraphrasing a lot of things here, the slopes where, if you can look at the graphic, zoom in on that next one. Yes, the closest one. This here is all low ground prior to development. Okay? Those areas were not sewered. They did not have utilities in them. So one of the benefits here is if earth could be added to that area, they could get a sanitary sewer system in there and open that side of the campground expansion to more sewerable campsites. So what that required is you're essentially filling an old depression, and which also required, based on the original footprint, moving a historical drainage way that used to come from more of the south and east and head across the interstate and go more north and west before it would turn due north. Okay? And so, again, to go back, why we're here tonight is for an assessment roll of a roadway that was petitioned to be built. There is, as we coordinate development all over town, we coordinate neighbors that to make sure drainage works with our current design standards, but also that we maximize developable property. And so that's why we're here tonight. It's why I feel like they're two separate issues. It's why I wanted to take it to the Land Use Committee, lay out everything that has been discussed to this point, and bring you my recommendation. Go ahead, Pat.
How was the drainage, was Robar Drive, did that affect the drainage going across? Did that delay the project in any way?
No, in fact, our workings with the property owners in this entire area, there used to be an 18-inch culvert that went through Robar. With the proposed Robar plans, the new and improved, we are going to put an 18-inch culvert back in there. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the drainage here. So if there's an 18-inch in Robar and the drainage flows from the south to the north, coming across the interstate was a 36-inch conduit or culvert. And so essentially there, what you've got a restriction, there is a wide spot in the road in this low area. And so it's always been considered a historical drainage way, but essentially a depression. One thing that we were able to do was upsize those pipes, upsize that pipe from an 18. And this took a lot of coordination with Dunham, which is to the north, because he has Granite Valley and he's got an existing detention pond. He also has an open channel where this water goes. What this required is that we increase that 18 up to a 36-inch culvert, an arch, and then another 24. So we went from the flow of 11 CFS up to 75 CFS. And so essentially, instead of having this large restriction and having this large ponding area for considerable time, we tightened up the flow requirements, increased the conduit from Robar, and then went further north and upsized conduits to a 60-inch pipe, city cost, because we're maximizing an existing drainage system, and that's what we do with the DSCR and the RDC. And then we also took that water into the detention pond.
Is that what could account for some of the increased costs that you experienced or referred to?
No.
Okay.
No.
Further questions?
And I apologize. I'm trying to paraphrase, and I'm trying to use the committee structure to really, when we get detailed issues like this. Sure. Any other questions?
Mark, can you tell me a little bit about the electrical issue of being shut down for 3 weeks?
I can. It is a code issue, but I want to essentially, Mike has on staff with building services, he has code inspectors. They have the appropriate licenses to go out, look at what's being installed, and by the code, make their inspections. And let me find this sentence in here. The neutral conductor that shall not be smaller than the phase conductors. Essentially is they were installing a neutral conductor, a 4-aught, that was smaller than what the phase conductors were, the hot cables. What we are, I think the perception is that our inspectors can go out in the field and make those design calls in the field, and that's not the case. There's a code that's been adopted by this, and you guys just adopted updated codes. That's what we go by. The fact that potentially their engineer did not look at the code to make sure that it met or exceeded code is that is where that Board of Appeals comes in, where they can come before and say, this is the reason why we did this. That does take time to get on their schedule, and the health and well-being of people, especially as it relates to outdoor electrical devices, I don't think can be compromised. Also, the next thing that came to is that the UL listed pedestals where you plug your camper into, as these large cables come up into it, the lugs that you attach to it weren't large enough to even receive the wires. And so the contractor, as I recall it, wanted to just change out the lugs. Well, you can't modify a UL listed piece of equipment without it being checked to make sure it wasn't UL compromised. And there are contractors that are available to come and make sure that no compromise was made. You know, the improvements were made based on what the city code inspector recommended. And so, again, we don't want to bear the cost or the delay for managing our code system.
Kevin?
I'm sorry, Pat, were you done?
No, on that matter then, so I assume he submitted a plan for the improvements, and are you saying that what was ultimately built there was not what was approved on the plans?
As far as site electrical goes, I can't answer that because that goes through building services. But essentially, what was going in the field did not meet code. Mike, any addition to that?
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. And again, this is information that we went through quite extensively with the Land Use Committee the other night. So I'm hoping that there'll be some comments from that committee as well here. We asked Ron Bell to retract what happened to address Mr. Spader's question about the electrical inspection. And Ron's information that came back to us is that, I'm just going to read an email that we got from him. Upon inspection request from Electric Supply, which was the electrical contractor doing the project for Mr. Spader, for the expansion of the campground, new pedestals were being installed along with the underground wiring serving the pedestals. And our electrical inspector, upon going out into the field, found that the wiring was not appropriately sized to serve the pedestals. The contractor, Electric Supply, added an appropriately sized grounded conductor, which is another wire, while the trenches were open. In other words, the trenches that the conduit was being installed. The only delay that occurred in the project for this particular inspection was the time period that discussions occurred between the electrical engineer and the electrical inspectors to find out how to resolve the issue, which was less than 1 day. It was additionally found that the lugs in the pedestals were too small for the size of the wire that was specified by the electrical engineer. The electrical inspector required that the pedestals either be replaced to meet the electrical code or that the underwriting laboratories verify, the UL, verify that the listing was not compromised for the replacement of these lugs. And that process did involve a review so that it did meet the underwriting code requirements and so that those lugs could be replaced. And I'm not sure exactly what time that took, but that's something that we could probably find out in more detail.
I guess my question, maybe you can't answer it, but did he have to submit a plan that detailed out all this?
Oh, yeah.
And then it was approved, and so then apparently it wasn't built to the way it was planned?
A plan is required for any building project like this, and those plans are approved. And when you get out into the field, obviously that's the purpose of the inspection, is to make sure that they are in compliance.
So in essence, that's what it was. It wasn't
Yes.
built to the way that it was shown on the plans.
I don't know what was shown on the plans, but I could go find out. Yes.
I guess that's all unfortunate that whatever the confusion came, but I'm still not quite certain as to how that's related to the assessment on Robart Drive. Yes, because in my mind, I think we've got three things at play here. We've got the assessment for Robart Drive, the issues with the water drainage, and the issues with the delay regarding the electrical pedestals and that such. And I don't understand how they're connected, other than they happen all at the same time.
Okay, how they are connected is when the city council at the hearing August 1st, the final hearing, asked if there's an objection. I got up and supported it. It was on the commitment from the city that if I signed my lease easement, that I could go ahead with my project, which was necessary. And that was confirmed also. Let me say it. It's right here, and it was in one of the details that Mark did a good job. Let me see. Is it on the other one? Oh, shoot, it's probably on the other one. I get frustrated with all these papers, but if I may take just a second here. I think it's July. And this is important because, okay, no.
Mark,
Easement's there.
while he's looking that up, then was there more to it than the electrical issue, the drainage, and the assessments? Was there any other factors at play there? Okay. And that was held up, you're saying, because the neighbors weren't comfortable with the easement agreement?
I certainly wouldn't point all to the neighbors. There's a number of solutions that a property owner can have their consulting engineer do and develop and bring forward to the city. We are in many ways, we're a reactionary system. They develop options and they bring them to us. But also, once it gets to a point where it affects more than one property owner, that's when we step in and actually try to, facilitate and maximize a drainage system.
And it was that time that just delayed this a little bit? Is that what?
Yes, okay. Because all of a sudden we asked permission to work with Granite Valley's engineer, which was Don Dunham. We also had property being developed that is east of there's the campground site, then there's the camper sales, and there was another property being developed that needed detention requirements that was further to the east. And in many parts of Sioux Falls, there's this happens all the time where we're coordinating this. I mean, our guys do this every day. It's what they do very well. And then also on the south side of the interstate, Gulbronsons are developing a large piece of land there. We also put drainage requirements on them that were actually higher than the current standards because we already knew we had a drainage-sensitive system here. So in those terms are called pre-development conditions. We didn't want them to release at any other condition than pre-development, meaning as that water will collect in that detention and slowly get released, it will assume that that land stayed grass, its current state. Same with the property that is the design homes, which is immediately to the east of the camper sales. Again, this drainage takes time to coordinate. We're not specific property owners, project managers. And so we have to be given time to coordinate, or they, as groups of developers, a lot of times will also come together. They'll do their own coordination, and then we'll be on the review. So it can happen a number of ways. Again, I was so hopeful that if we worked with Dwayne, that we would reach a consensus so he could see it from our point of view on how drainage is coordinated. Again, you're going to see that Dwayne and I agree to disagree, and I do want to keep them separate because what this does is that we, as Public Works, coordinate assessment projects all over the city, and I would prefer to not tie any ancillary item to an assessment that's not related to it.
Mark, I guess I'm going to follow up to Pat's question because I'm not sure we got the answer he wanted. But is this electrical project a required element of the street project?
Oh, no. This is, the electrical element was...
That's fine. Thank you. My question has been answered. What I don't understand is why we're talking about that project. We're talking about an assessment role here. We're talking about charging property owners for an improvement, a public improvement that the city did. This electrical project is completely separate. Did the city do that project?
No, this is the campground pedestals that you pull your campground next to on Dwayne's property and plug in. And again, this was a consideration. Remember when the perception is Public Works received we thought you guys received Dwayne's letter. I wasn't here that night, but I gave guidance to Chad Heavey. I thought you guys had received Mr. Spader's letter that said, here's why I would like my assessments to be waived. And at that point, I told Chad, this is a separate issue. I recommend we move forward. Keep this assessment on track. And then we got here and realized that you guys did not have the letter. And so as a courtesy to that point and as a courtesy to Mr. Spader, we started to recommend deferrals. And again, those recommendations started back in November.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, since the Land Use Committee has spent a considerable amount of time on this with staff, I'd be interested in hearing what their logic is for the recommendation they made.
Okay, this Chair?
Yes, the Land Use Committee did meet on January 29th. Mr. Staggers was not present there, as Bob Jamieson and myself and various others. Land Use Committee met after the informational meeting to hear and discuss certain matters of Dwayne Spader and their relationship to the special assessment of Rober Drive. The committee is conscious of Mr. Spader's concerns, but believes those issues are not related to the roadway assessment and therefore recommends a resolution of assessment move forward. If Mr. Spader has additional issues unrelated to the construction of Rober Drive, those issues should be should be addressed accordingly through the appropriate departmental processes.
Thank you. Dean?
I'd like to move for approval of item number 50.
Motion is to approve item number 50.
Just, Dwayne was going to provide his reasoning on how these are related, and if we just give him a couple minutes to quickly explain how they're related.
Quickly, Dwayne, please.
How they're related is, here's a July 27th, city sends easement document to Mr. Spader McConville's for signature. July 27th, Mr. Spader's design engineer informs the city that he has signed the easement. That easement, by signing that easement, I was told we could go ahead with the project, so that took otherwise, I would have stood up in the city council at that time and objected because it destroyed the campground. If I could not proceed with the campground project, the campground was destroyed by the Rober Drive project. But because the city had told me if I signed that easement, and two of the top officers of the city confirmed that, if I signed that easement, that I could go ahead with the project. Then what happened? That campground was shut down. The day before, we had the contractors, the machines, and everything all lined up. For October 1st, we shut the campground 2 weeks earlier, and they were scheduled to run on Monday morning because we had to get the dirt across before the pavement was put in. Otherwise, it was going to cost me 3 times for the dirt. And on Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I was informed that we could not proceed with the campground project moving the dirt, because there was some dispute on the easement. And they said it was my fault that McConville's had not signed their easement. But let me read here. August 1st, the same day of the city, August 1st, engineering meets with McConville's to discuss drainage easement. And these are the things I'd like to present. So the city met with McConville's, the other people, I hate to even mention the name, the people to the east, they met, and they were blaming me for not getting their signature, and they did not, there was no condition at the city council meeting that I had to have theirs. Nobody told me that. Nobody said it. They're trying to make it look like it was my fault, but it wasn't. And they was the last ones to meet with. So the city come in, closed me down. That cost 6 weeks in the fall. We got the dirt moved. In the spring, we got an early start. And also, it didn't go quite the way it was suggested on the electrical. The electrical was UAL approved. When the city inspector changed it, he changed the codes. That caused a chain reaction. The lugs were big enough for the ULA approved code. They were designed by an electrical engineer. There was no, and the wiring was adequate with it. I would like to, I'm asking for permission to come back in if you want to hear more to defend that. And so we literally house tied together. The campground could not do a thing and was shut down by the city because of the Rober Drive project. That's how they're tied together. And I think to separate them is not a fair, just not a fair thing. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question here? The $111,000, how much of it is the assessment for the street?
Well, it's the street and the curbs and gutters and everything, total.
Oh, okay.
I think it's 590 feet at $188
Okay,
a
so
foot.
once again, the $111,000 is just how much they're assessing you for the street. It's not with the sewer or, water services or anything like that. Is that right?
No, because we had water service. Well, it includes the water service, sewer and water and that in the street, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We've got a motion that's been made. Is there a second motion to approve the resolution?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. Further comment?
Sorry. Mark, is it possible to split these out as Mr. Spader has asked? I mean,
It's possible, but I would not recommend that.
because?
Because they're separate issues. I'm not going to come to any different resolution. I can't bring you a different recommendation. We've invested a lot of professional time in this, and I would strongly urge you to not do that.
No, I'm comfortable with what you're presenting. I'm just trying to allow more time for him to put together his argument.
Kevin?
Well, it would seem to me that his argument goes to the dispute he has with the city over how we managed his electrical project. And certainly, I don't want to foreclose any recourse he has in that regard, but it has nothing, from what I've been able to understand here tonight, nothing to do with that street project.
And I would agree.
Quickly, we all, I think, understand the issue. Dwayne, would you come up to the speaker?
It does, because what I was told at the council hearing was rejected, and had I not been removed, I would have had a chance to make my position to the council before. So it removed all defenses of the council doing it. They told me I could go ahead, and then they retracted it after the council approved it, and I was committing on the basis that they had promised me that if I signed my easement that I could move ahead. And then, so the council approved it, I stood up and said I supported it, and then later on they withdrew that, and it would have been a totally different position. My position with the council would have been it would have had to been, had I had a chance. So it removed all opportunity for the council to hear my position when they changed, completely reversed the thing, and it totally affected everything that was done.
Okay, we've got a motion made
Mr.
and
Mayor,
seconded.
I call the question.
Call the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Kevin, seconded. Kavanaugh, seconded. Motion to call the question. All in favor of calling the question will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
No.
Benega?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
No.
Jameson?
No.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Yes. Question has been called, so we're back to the motion to approve the resolution that has been made and seconded. There's no further discussion. The question has been called. All in favor of the motion?
Can any substitute motions be made?
Pardon?
Can any substitute motions be made? Nothing as is.
You
got to vote on that. You got to vote on.
He's got to
vote on that. So you got to vote on the main motion now.
No, you can substitute.
Can I make a substitute motion?
Substitute motion.
Question to call.
So you can't?
You got to vote on the motion. You got to vote on her motion and the motion with Brown. At this point, you can't. There's no debate. It's over. It's just call the question. When you call a question, there's no. You got to on Council Member Knutson and Brown. That's why you call the question. So you got to vote on that. So now we're back to the main motion.
If I could just ask, I thought calling the question meant we're stopping discussion on this, but he wants to present a new motion, a substitute motion. It's not discussion; it's just presenting a substitute motion.
I think you got a motion. You got a motion before you to vote on, and I don't think you can.
Yeah. Because we're not discussing.
Pardon? The motion was called. That was the intent to vote on the main motion. So here we are with the main motion.
to vote on the Knutson-Brown motion to approve the resolution. All in favor of that
Okay,
motion?
now,
Yes.
can I say something about voting on this? Yeah, I'm going to vote against this motion.
No, the question, because you can't hear, unless you have a question of the chair, so. The question, that's what the question's been called, so we can make the motion.
No, but I'm not discussing. I'm just presenting my...
No. The question, we're at the motion for resolution. All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
No.
Benega?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
No.
Jameson?
No.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Munson, yes. Okay, we're at 51, item 51.
Preliminary subdivision plan, 2006-12-07, Pinnacle Point addition to the city of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, northwest corner of West Benson Road and I-29.
This is the same property that you acted on tonight under item 37, which was the rezoning. This development plan shows the proposed layout of streets and lots, and it's been reviewed by city staff and does meet our requirements. There were some stipulations included within the recommendation tonight, and those all can be met by the developer. So we are recommending approval of this subdivision plan tonight.
Questions? Others wish to address council item number 51. Council discussion or action?
Move for approval, Jameson.
Jameson moves. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments? No further comments. All in favor of the motion to approve item 51, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz? Staggers?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 51 has been approved 8-0. Item 52.
A resolution amending the future land use map as part of the Sioux Falls 2015 Growth Management Plan, petition number 2006-12-16, at the northeast corner of West 41st Street and Ellis Road.
This is property that's approximately 80 acres in size that was recently annexed into the city limits by a petition from the property owners. The developers are working with staff on a future plan to develop this property. And this amendment changes some of the boundaries of the proposed zoning that will come back to you at a later date. The changes are primarily modifying the amount of acres of commercial, residential, and office development that will be allowed on this property. We did present this to the Planning Commission last month, and there was a recommendation to approve with one minor change, which will include, and that's up on the screen right now, to maintain a row of single-family residential on the northeast corner of this development. Other than that, the recommendation is to move forward as presented by the petitioners. So what's being recommended tonight is to approve this with the change that was voted on by the Planning Commission.
Questions of Mike on item number 52. Others that wish to address council on item number 52? Council discussion or action on item 52?
I move for approval.
Knutson, is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments? Being no further comments, all in favor of the motion to approve item 52, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz? Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 52 has been approved 8-0. Item 53.
A resolution adopting as a goal that the city maintain an 11% monthly unrestricted cash balance and a 25% general fund reserve balance at year end, that future budgets of the city balance without the use of unobligated reserve balances, establishing a council policy regarding the use of projected revenue from fee or tax increases in any budget adopted by the council, and establishing a council policy on the use of enterprise funds.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I will address this as fiscal chair. The fiscal committee has spent about 3 months working on this legislation. It's been a cooperative effort between the council and the administration, specifically Finance Director Gene Rowenhorst and City Attorney Gary Caldwell have helped us with this. There are 4 elements to it. It sets the minimum percentage for our reserves, our city's savings account. In my time on the council, we've always talked about, had many discussions about setting a level. This accomplishes that. The monthly minimum is for the reserves is 11%. The year end is 25%. If the reserves dip below that amount, the mayor will provide an explanation. That could be something as simple as telling us that the state did not remit the sales tax dollars in a timely manner. The second element is the balanced budget portion of the resolution. The goal is to match what we spend with what we take in. If the year-end reserves are greater than 25%, the mayor can use those funds to balance next year's budget. For example, our 2006 year-end budget shows that we have $3 million extra dollars in reserves, which is above the 25% minimum standard we're setting. That money could be used for one-time spending projects. That also helps us prevents us from building up huge reserves account and virtually overtaxing citizens for the ongoing operations of government. The third element is if the mayor sees a need for an increase in fees or taxes, those fees or taxes should be presented and approved by the council prior to the mayor submitting the proposed budget. And the fourth element is the enterprise funds, the self-supporting programs, which include water, water reclamation, sanitary landfill, and electric. They must truly be self-supporting by covering their true costs of their operations. This is a resolution, a recommendation, not a law or an ordinance. We want this to be the goal, but we recognize that this needs to have some flexibility for the administration as well. It's meant in the spirit of cooperation from and information for the council.
Questions? Others wish to address council on item 53. Dee?
Vernon, question for you. I know a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, you passed out the, draft of this and so forth, and I really like the idea of a balanced budget. I actually really support that concept in general. And the part that I'm struggling with, as I just think about it more and more after I saw it, is just the 11% bit. As far as the monthly bit, I feel like it's kind of like, I know the intentions are good, but I feel like it goes a little bit overboard for me. And so would you please remind me why there was a need to do the monthly thing? Because I could easily support just, the council expects and requests a balanced budget. I really support that concept. So will you help me on the monthly bit?
Sure. We went on the recommendation of Finance Director Gene Rowenhorst and GFOA. Actually, GFOA, I believe, had a higher percentage, like 15% on monthly reserves. We looked at 11% on the recommendation of the Finance Director Gene Rowenhorst. So that's where we came up with that number.
Kevin?
If I could just add, the basic concept at 11% is we just don't go below that because that is the lowest possible amount we would like in the checkbook, if you will, at any one point in time. And there are several times throughout the year when property tax collections, for example, we only get twice a year. Just prior to those collections, we have a very low balance. We get to our lowest point in the year. And what that 11% will allow us to do is pay the bills, cash flow.
And if I recall, and Gene, correct me if I'm wrong, we've only gotten below that 11% one time in the last 4 years. So if you looked back, it's a very reasonable number.
And if I may follow up with that, and we're not looking for this to be difficult. We just want an awareness amongst the council that, okay, we're getting at a level that we need to be careful, and we're not looking for a huge action plan, but a recognition and information for the council that we're at that point.
Further questions? Others wish to address council on item number 53, council discussion or action.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I have an amendment. My amendment is to add the public parking lot fund to the enterprise funds.
Pardon?
The public parking lot fund.
Where is that at?
As part of the enterprise funds.
Yeah.
In the fourth, be it resolved.
Fourth one, okay. Does everybody understand that?
Last one.
That's that in there?
Well, I'll second that for discussion purposes.
Okay, go ahead, Kermit.
Yeah, the primary reason why I wanted to try to add this fund is because, well, it has been self-supporting in the past. And I think we ought to keep it that way, but the way it looks now, we might be moving in the direction of having taxpayers subsidize this, and I would prefer that we just keep it the way it's been.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Kevin?
Question for finance, if you have an answer. I'm not sure it's accurate to say it's been self-supporting. In my 6 years on the council, I can't recall it ever being self-supporting.
It has not, and to make it self-supporting is probably not a reasonable goal at this point. We should have Randy here, but I think right now he's somewhere around $50 a month on the lots. I don't know about the just the lot, but on the parking ramps. Those parking ramps cost somewhere around $18,000 a lot, or a parking spot, where the ones that are just on plain land are somewhere around $3,000. If you would take a 10% return on $18,000, it means you would have to be charging somewhere in the area of $1,800 a year. I don't know what that comes out to dividing by 12, but it's a lot more than $50. And these ramps, we can see no way that these ramps will ever carry their own weight, at least not in the foreseeable future.
Thank you. If I could continue, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And I know what Kermit is after, and I don't necessarily disagree with what he's attempting to do, but I think the whole concept of whether or not public parking should be a profitable enterprise or even pay for itself is another discussion that we should have. I'm not sure this is the time or the place.
We have a parking study that's currently underway, and I believe as a part of that is an evaluation of how to fund future parking ramps, is it not?
That'll be part of the discussion.
Part of the discussion.
The real discussion is about what we need for parking. What do we get really probably a better delineated inventory of what we have available.
And I guess I would say that I thank Kermit for bringing this issue up, and I agree that there, I think we're headed to a direction where we're going to be adding parking ramps downtown, and I don't know how we're going to pay for it, but I intuitively like the idea of them being self-sufficient and an enterprise fund. I just don't know that that's reasonable at this time, and we can look for the study too.
I too respect Councilor Stager's amendment, but I think it might be a little ahead of its time. We've spent a great deal of time and effort in the last several years attracting businesses and employees downtown, and it's just not feasible today, I don't think, to do it. I think it is a discussion we need to have down the road, and this is something that we can amend down the road should that be appropriate, but I respectfully ask you to not support this amendment.
Yes, I guess what I was focusing on here is not having a tax subsidy for these parking ramps. These parking ramps, as pointed out, are not self-supporting because we use parking fines to help keep them going. So that's what we would continue doing, but to try to ensure that we do not have any tax subsidy.
Okay, we've got a motion before us, been made and seconded to amend item number 53. Everybody understand that for the enterprise, for the parking? Okay. All in favor of that motion to amend will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Litz,
Respectfully, no.
Staggers,
Respectfully, yes.
Benega,
No.
Brown,
No.
Costello,
No.
Jameson,
No.
Kavanaugh,
No.
Knudsen.
Respectfully, no.
All members present voted that motion failed. We're back to the original motion. Back to 53. Is there, we
haven't had a motion.
Move to approve. Brown.
Okay, Brown moves in a second. Who seconded?
Second, Costello.
Costello seconded. Further comments? No further comments. All in favor will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Litz,
Yes.
Staggers,
Yes.
Benega,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen.
All
Yes.
members present have voted. Item 53 has been approved 8-0. Item 54.
A resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to the Metro Management Council.
That, does anyone want to take it? That's just for the appointment of, this is CCOG, isn't it? That we have?
No, it's
this is we got Newsom Costello and Benega that we've asked to serve on that Metro Council has changed its mission with the counties. So we have two people from, two council members from the council and the mayor, along with two county commissioners. So that's what that's all about. So
I make a motion to approve that resolution.
Knutson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Jamison.
Jamison second. Further comments? See no further comments. All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 54 has been approved 8-0. Item 55.
A resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards, CCOG.
This is a resolution to appoint Vernon Brown, reappoint Vernon Brown and Pat Costello to the CCOG board with D. Knutson as an alternate. Move for approval.
Okay, Jamison moved. Is there a second?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Second, Kavanaugh. Motion made. Second. All in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Item 55 has been approved 8-0. Item 56.
A resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 2006-11-03, Madison Street and Powder House Road.
This resolution would approve a petition by the property owners requesting annexation of approximately 200 acres of land into the city limits, and this property is located in the very northeastern corner of Sioux Falls, directly north of Madison Street, on either side of Powder House Road. And we do have the ability to provide services to this property in the future. The property is also located within the Brandon Valley School District, and the recommendation is to approve this annexation request.
Questions of Mike on item 56? Others wish to address council on item 56. Council discussion or action?
I move for approval.
Knutson, is there a second?
Second, Jamison.
Jamison seconds. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of the motion approved, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 56 has been approved 8-0. Item 57.
A resolution advising, giving consent, and approving the mayor's interim successors pursuant to Section 2.03 of the city's home rule charter.
What this does is just lays out a succession plan in the event that the mayor can't carry out the duty, and the director of planning and building services is one, and human resources, and then parks and rec, and the chief of police. So it's just the succession plan. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Jamison, is a second?
Second, Benega.
Benega, second. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of the motion approved, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members present and voted has been approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
No.
Which one is that?
Oh, the walk-in.
Yeah, we have one more.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Special one-day malt beverage license and special one-day wine license for the southeastern chapter of the South Dakota Engineering Society to be held at Dalrymple Village, 1000 North Lake Avenue on February 24th, 2007 for their annual banquet.
Mr. Mayor, this was a late request that came to Finance, but in order to accommodate the request for the one-day license for the event, they needed to be scheduled for a public hearing on February 20th with the other liquor license. And I would ask that the council do schedule this for hearing on February 20th.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion been made, seconded. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
All members have voted. The motion has been approved. The hearing date has been set. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Brown.
Second, Brown. All in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Litz? Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Stand adjourned.